So this is Michael, and I'm here with my favorite attorney, Donica. And every time, I'm going to be honest with you, I always struggle to pronounce your last name.
Forensich.
Forensich. If you look at it, it
Phonetically.
looks... Yeah, if you look at it, do people butcher it up usually?
Always.
Always. So what are some of the worst butcherings you've heard?
I mean, most of the time it's forensic or, forenzy, it's just all over the place. So, and then I get all kinds of things with my first name. Donica is not obviously a common name either. So I get Donna a lot, or Donna what? No, I only did my first name. I haven't even told you my last name yet.
Right, exactly. Okay. You've been an attorney for a while now, about, what was it, 16 years?
Yeah, I just started my 16th year as an attorney.
Okay. And you decided to get into, like, the stuff that you're in now is mostly, like, corporate stuff with, like, tech startups.
Always done corporate work.
Yeah.
So I was a corporate paralegal for 6 years before I went to law school.
Wow, okay.
So that's how I started. And then, I've always done corporate work. I never wanted to be a litigator or go to court.
Well, was that because you took the Myers-Briggs test and you tested as an ISFJ?
Mm-hmm. And people don't realize that I'm very much an introvert. I've had to really overcome my fear. Like, I think I put one little thing in there. Like when I was in kindergarten, I was so shy, I wouldn't even talk to the teachers when they called on me and they thought something was wrong with me.
They were going to hold you back, right?
They were going to hold me back.
Yeah.
And then my mom always tells a story where after school one day, she took me and my younger sister to McDonald's, and the teacher happened to be behind us in the line. And I was, yapping at my little sister, and I guess she tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Now I know you can talk, so there's no more." And getting away with that. So, I don't remember that, but my mom always tells that story. But I was always the shy kid where I wouldn't raise my hand, or I didn't like to get up and talk in class in front of people or give speeches. So, but the corporate work is really good because I like numbers and, those types of things. And so that's really suits me.
Interesting. And that definitely suits your personality type too. Like, I was actually, for a while, like I was in a relationship with somebody who was actually an ISFJ, same as you. And it was interesting how similar you guys were in terms of being super shy to give talks in front of people. But one-on-one, though, you're like, they just open up, especially if they know the person really well. So
Yeah. And it's taken me a while, you have to push yourself, right, to network at events, and slowly it gets more and more comfortable. But I still, if I go to an event where I don't know anybody, really, before I walk in, I just have to take a few deep breaths and, force myself to fake it.
Yeah.
Until you find a few people to talk to. So, but one-on-one with clients, I never have any issues. Like you said, when I talk to somebody, and I think, when I know what I'm talking about, you're comfortable and confident. So it helps a lot. So doing this for a lot of years. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, something I'm the least comfortable and competent about is talking about law.
Well, there's a lot to know.
Yeah. So interesting. And so you were mentioning how there's this old saying where opposites attract, right? Some people agree, some people don't actually. But I think of your favorite client, Haley, right? Broke my heart when you didn't say me.
I know. I was gonna...
My ego leaves the door as soon as I come into the studio.
I love shoes. Like shoes and bags are my thing. Like so, it's a good fit for me to work with Passion and Haley.
And I thought it's super interesting that you mentioned her, and I would assume too because of her personality, not just because of her product. But I can't think of a more opposite person than her,
right,
to your personality. Like, she's the most extroverted person I've met in a while,
right? Yeah.
And just blaring with confidence.
Oh yeah.
And it's like your alter ego. You guys should start a business together.
Maybe your next one.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, Haley, she's a super interesting person in the sense of how young she was when she became so successful, and she just, I don't get a sense of fear in her. Like, she does not seem to be really fazed by, I mean, even going on Shark Tank, like that was a huge thing for someone her age to go on there and completely put herself out there. And like, it's not a product either that she just kind of is trying to make money at. Like, she's got her heart in that thing.
Oh, definitely. You'll have to have her on the podcast.
I think she'd be great.
She'd be a great guest. But yeah, no, she's super confident, and she is just a go-getter. And, you know, she does not, and somebody says no, she'll figure out a way to make them say yes. It's her personality, or figure out, you know, how to get to the next step. And she has a really, you know, great drive. And I think she'll be very successful.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, cool. So, you grew up, where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Jose, Bay Area.
Okay. And you pretty much stayed in that area, and then you eventually came down here. I have a question. So why did you come down here? And first of all, how did you get connected to the hot house in San Luis Obispo? Because that's like far south from.
Yeah. And I didn't go to Cal Poly.
Weird. Okay.
So Judy Mahan, who runs the incubator and the SBDC programs out of the hot house at the
great.
CIE. Yeah. So Judy and I worked at the same big law firm in Palo Alto, but not at the same time.
Oh.
But we had the same mentor. And when she was, you know, looking for counsel to help volunteer for the programs, she reached out to our mentor, and he connected me with Judy, and we hit it off. And I've been helping out for about 6 years now, coming down occasionally, giving trainings, talks, obviously introduced to a lot of clients that way. And I've always loved the area down here. I've been coming down to Paso Robles for about 10 plus 15 years-ish, doing wine trips and things. And it was time to leave the Bay Area and the chaos. And I'm very fortunate that at my firm that I started last year, we plan to be all remote even before COVID happened. So I can work anywhere that I have a good Wi-Fi connection. So, yeah.
Cool.
So, time to relocate.
And we got fiber down in San Luis Obispo too, like the internet. Digital West.
Nice.
So yeah, well, you're in Paso, so
yeah, I
it's a
have
little different
Spectrum.
Yeah, okay.
It works.
Yeah, 1.5 stars out of 5. You know, it could be worse. It could be 1. Sorry, Spectrum. You can throw it under the bus today. Okay, cool. So let's see. One question that I asked you beforehand that I actually thought was really interesting, and it really does show people's values sometimes, is like, if you could change one thing about the world, or basically like if you were granted like one wish, literally anything, it could be for yourself, it could be for a family member or anything like that, and you decided to sacrifice it and give it to the entire human race, and your answer was to end poverty.
Yes.
Dig into that a little bit. Why do you care about that so much?
I just think that we have a society in the U.S. especially, and many places in the world, where we've gone to this almost two-class system. You know, you have the ultra-wealthy and then everyone else. And to see children that don't get meals, and, you know, homeless people because they have mental health issues, that we just don't take care of people. And we don't, I think that if we could end some of the poverty cycles, then we can get to a place where everyone is deserving of a good life. And, you know, I think it starts at the beginning with early childhood. You know, I don't think we can fix some of the things that are broken now, but maybe with the next generation. I talk to my friends a lot about, like, how do we solve things? Like, a lot of the homelessness is mental health, right? And if we could have a system where people can get assistance from the beginning, whether it's childcare, whether, you know, it's good nutrition, education, all of those things will lift people out of poverty to be self-sustaining, and we won't have these issues continue. So I think some of the things currently in Congress are getting there. There's a lot of discussion about what will ultimately be in the bills that are being circulated now and won't. But I think if we start with children, we can lift them out of poverty, and no child should just go to bed hungry, and it just breaks my heart.
Yeah. there's a broad spectrum of areas to improve with regard to like investing in the early seeds of society, right? And one that I learned about that was pretty interesting, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this one, is actually something that Jeff Bezos talked about in a speech, and he's like very, very, very passionate about this, and he's putting a lot of money into this actually, especially in his area in the greater Seattle, in the Seattle area. Preschools, kids who basically kind of miss that, and they jump into kindergarten a little bit too late. They're always like one step behind.
Mm-hmm.
And research has shown, according to him, that if you can just get them into preschool early and get them into that really early stage, so basically almost like a head start, but everybody.
Right.
He said that makes a huge difference. That's what they said, at least.
Yeah, I believe there's a lot of data that supports that. You think about people that, they say just reading to your child, even an infant, and the more verbal you are, the better that they'll be with language, and earlier that they'll be able to communicate and things like that. And if you have a household where parents are working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive, how is that parent going to have time to do those things? So you think of the different classes and what they can give their child, right? Yeah. Obviously, a lot of people that are wealthy can afford childcare, can afford those preschools, can afford, one parent working, or at least part-time, or a nanny or something. And other, these people that are, barely surviving at the poverty line, don't have those luxuries. And we need to make it, there's no way we're going to break that cycle without that early childhood education where people are all given the same starting point.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that one. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how things kind of play out and all that. I wonder if there's any countries out there that are actually doing a good job at it right now.
I think there are in Europe. There are some countries. Obviously, I think that some of like the Finland or Sweden, those have a lot of studies on education and young children. And I can't remember which it is that has done away with homework for elementary.
Sweden, or no, was it?
It's Sweden or Finland or Norway, Finland. Of those.
Finland, yeah.
And because I hear these parents of, some of my friends have younger kids, and in kindergarten, they're coming home with like an hour of homework. That's, to me, is ridiculous, and elementary school. What is the point of it other than having the frustration of the parent and the child to sit there for an hour or two?
Right.
So it's interesting because their studies show that there's no benefit to some of that homework.
Yeah. So before you became an attorney, before you went to school, before you went to all that, you were at one point in preschool. Well, I guess you can say. And do you feel like you were one of the ones that had to catch up, or did you get a head start?
No, I think I got a head start. I just, I didn't really like preschool. I never liked school, even though I went to a lot of school. But I think that my parents were the type that, they read to us, they spent time with us. So I was fortunate that my mom was able to stay home for most of my child. Like in my early years, she had to work, but then she was able to stay home. And I think that just benefited me and my siblings as well. And I was always the child that came home, did my homework, got it done. There was no problem. So I was that type A from the beginning. Where my siblings were a little bit of procrastinators.
Oh, got it. Yeah. It was a little bit similar with me. Like my brother was the procrastinator.
Yeah.
Love him though. He's an artist. Yeah, he's great. Cool. So eventually you graduated preschool, and then you graduated elementary school.
I did.
Then high school.
Yeah.
About what time did you realize, I want to be into law? This is really interesting for me, because you got into paralegal, and I think that's a natural progression to become a lawyer.
Yeah, but it took me a while to find that. So when I first went to college, I was a biology major, and I thought I wanted to go to medical school. Okay. And I went to UCLA, and I hated it.
Really?
It was so big and so overwhelming, and as an introvert who went to not a huge high school, it was just not the right fit for me. So I ended up coming home. I went to community college, did all my GE, bounced around thinking of different things. I went through maybe I'll go into physical therapy or then accounting. And then I found the paralegal program, and it just clicked with me. And from there, it was just a really good fit. And then the corporate law, I think, the numbers and the structure of it just really fit my personality.
Yeah.
And then I really didn't have an intention to go to law school or become an attorney. I really enjoyed being a paralegal. But after 6 years, I was sort of hitting a ceiling intellectually of where I could go. And I had great bosses who really let me do attorney level work. So after being at 2 companies that were acquired, it was just a good time to say, okay, this is, if I'm going to go to law school, it's now or never. And I just did it.
Really interesting. So that's the reason why you got into law school.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I mean, I'm not trying to like put you on a pedestal or do any like brown nosing or anything like that, but like they say that like of the IQ levels, average IQ levels, attorneys are on average amongst the highest of all the other industries. I mean, doctors were like right up there too. Maybe they were tied, I don't know. Maybe you got rocket scientists and brain surgeons and stuff, but like, do you notice though, like a lot of your colleagues and stuff are just basically brainiacs? Like there's no dull light bulbs when you pass the bar.
No, most people are smart. I think you have to be able to take the different tests to get into law school and pass a bar exam. It's a lot about test taking and learning how to take the test. And law school is an interesting way to teach. It's a Socratic method. We could talk about that too. But I think most people are generally smart, book smart. I think there's a difference on, I've met a lot of really smart attorneys that have gone to Harvard, Yale and stuff. But to me, some of them are great people too, but a lot of them don't have the people skills. And I think depending on what area of law you go into, like there's certain ones you can do. Maybe you're a patent attorney and you don't have to be as good with people, but like if you're going to be a litigator, you need to have that charisma and stuff. And then, other times you just have to be good with people so that they'll want to work with you. But I've met a lot that just aren't good, don't have the good people skills. It's kind of like engineers sometimes, right? They're super smart, but no common sense, some of them.
Yeah, they're good in academia.
Yeah.
They go right through that system. It's interesting how academia doesn't actually like help you with that area too much, does it?
No, and law school doesn't teach you how to practice law.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You would think that they would.
No, it needs to be updated. A lot more programs are doing more practical experience nowadays, but it's taught in the Socratic method where it's questions and answers. You can't just go sit in a lecture in the back and zone out. You have to have read the material because you never know when you're going to be called on.
Yeah.
It's really about teaching you how to think on your feet. So it's very geared toward trial attorneys. If you're, doing a trial and the judge starts asking you questions, to be prepared. And so it's not really focused on the transactional aspect or corporate law. And so I think that, they make everybody do what's called moot court. So you have to, argue a case and those types of things. And so for people like me who knew going in, I didn't want to do any of that. It was some of that. It was just, you have to get through it.
It's like pulling teeth. Huh?
Yeah, especially when you don't like to talk and argue in front of people. And so I think I would think that it's 3 years, right? And I think it should be more like medical school, where maybe the first 2 years is learning the law and the different types of law, and then the third year is more practical. It should be either internships or things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on that one for sure. So you mentioned that in law school, there's certain things that it just doesn't teach you, and you have to kind of learn those things when you're in the practice. So for all the law students out there, if they're listening, hello, what kind of things would you give them advice for? Or rather, if you can go in a time machine to give yourself advice when you're in law school, to give yourself expectations of what it's really going to be like that you just can't know until you're actually practicing. Like, what would some of those things be?
Just do as many internships as you can. And if your law school offers clinics that work with different populations and in different ways, like Santa Clara Law is really great. And being in the Bay Area, they have a tech law center similar to what Judy runs here, where people can come and get legal advice for their businesses and things like that. So pick a school that has some of those areas that you want to think you want to focus on.
Yeah.
I would also say don't go right from undergrad to law school.
Really?
No, I
Why?
think people should work. I think you need to have that experience in a job. I think it prepares you better. You mature more. And law school is so expensive that if you're going to go drop $150,000, $200,000 on school, I think you should know you really want to do it before you go in.
Yeah. Wow.
And I had some friends that went straight through, and they had no idea like what type of law they wanted to practice, what interests them, and they were a bit lost as far as jobs and what they thought they wanted to apply to.
Oh, interesting. And this is like in terms of like what division of law to get into. Okay.
Yeah, I knew going in I wanted to do corporate.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, have no idea.
Yeah.
And it's become so specialized. There's really not generalists anymore.
Do you know any attorneys who like still don't know what they're doing and they're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what area of law I like?
No, I mean, I think people have found their niches ultimately.
Okay.
But I know attorneys that are old school generalists, and it causes some issues.
I know a couple of those. They're great. Gotta have them. So if you didn't get into corporate, was there a close second?
No.
Really? Wow, it's just first place all the way, and then everything else was pretty much last place. I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last one you wanted to do was litigation. Unless there's something worse. Is there anything worse in litigation from your perspective?
That was the worst ever.
Really?
Yeah, I hated the moot court we had to do.
Tell me about what that was like.
It was
like, I want to dig into
just anxiety filled.
Tell me about the first one. Like, that would probably be the worst, right?
Yeah, you have to write a brief on your topic, and you get up there, and you're one position, and you're assigned, right?
Yeah.
Defense or plaintiff. And then there's somebody that's being like a judge, right? A mock judge. I liked being the judge.
Oh.
Because I got to do that as part of law school too. But,
interesting. You liked being the judge.
Yeah.
Okay.
It probably goes with my Myers-Briggs too.
Yeah.
But it was just terrifying because you're just thrown questions, and you have to argue your case, and you have to instantly think about what the question you're answering and how that relates to your case and the facts of your case and the law and applying it in the right way. And so it's just, I'm sure that there's people that thrive on that anxiety, right? And adrenaline, not me. I did one pro bono case when I was a first year lawyer, and it was a guardianship case, and I had to go to these aunt and uncle were getting guardianship of their nephew. And it was through like a pro bono law clinic, and we had to go to court for the judge to approve it. And I had to get up there, say my name, say who I represented, and just answer a couple yes or no questions. The whole thing lasted like 3 minutes, but I was completely terrified. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And then when you're all done, you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, it's over. It was granted, and it was over, and it was fine. But it was just terrifying. You don't want to make a mistake, especially when you have people's lives in your hands. So,
yeah.
But when I was in law school, one summer I worked for one of my professors, and then when we were second years, he made the first years go and do some arguments, and so those of us that were his research assistants, we got to be the judges and ask the questions. So being on the other side was fine.
Okay,
no problem there.
So if I ever get sued and I have to go to litigation, you're going to help me find somebody.
Oh yeah, I know lots of litigators. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I fortunately have lots of litigators in my network. So
cool, that's great. So it sounds like you really did find your path, and sometimes some people they feel like they're close, maybe they're not quite there. Sounds like you're definitely in that camp where you're like, I know my purpose in life, this is what I'm doing, no changes. If you ever did make a career move either in the future or in the past and not do this, and you had to, like, for example, you had to choose something different, what would you have done if you didn't get into law?
I think I probably would have ended up teaching, because I really have a passion of helping kids and giving back. And so I even think about that now, like when I retire from law, that I want to go back and teach.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, teachers in our society aren't valued and paid well, and that's part of our problem too.
Yeah.
But I love working with kids, and I'm involved in a nonprofit that helps kids.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a real passion of
Wow.
mine.
Wow. What kind of age would you teach?
I'd probably want to teach high school.
High school.
Yeah.
Oh, why high school?
Because I think they are at the place where they're either going to choose a good path or a bad path.
That's the tipping point.
I think so.
And you want to influence that.
Yeah, or middle school, like late middle school, early high school. Yeah. And I think, and I'd also love to teach more girls to show them that women can be, you know, the entrepreneur or the founder or the successful person, you know, in life too. That unfortunately we're getting better, right? When I went to law school, it's 50-50 men and women. Like when Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was like one of 2 women in her class, but she was at the top of her class. She's my idol.
Oh, really? What was her name again?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice, RBG.
I should know that. Okay.
Notorious RBG. And, you know, I just still think that I go to board meetings where sometimes I'm the only woman in the room or on the call. And,
wow.
You know, even in venture capital is still, unfortunately, no offense, geared towards men.
No,
but,
yeah.
Even though there's a lot of data that will show the ROI from women founders is better sometimes than male founders.
Sure.
So I think that, you know, I was lucky to have parents that said you can do anything you want and we're behind you and very supportive. But a lot of young girls don't have that either. So
right. They don't got that social network.
It's still that very much gender-dominated roles. And we're getting better as a society. But I think we can improve. Yeah. And I think just, you know, teaching and educating kids about history and mistakes that societies have made and how we can improve on them and not just picking and choosing good parts of history, that people should learn about the bad parts too.
Right.
And so that we learn from our mistakes as a society is important. So I think that high school age is where you learn most of that American history and government and political science. And that's another thing that I am very passionate about too. Making sure young children understand how their power of voting can help influence society.
So you would teach history?
History and probably government and political science.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. We'll see.
Well, if I ever have a kid someday and I'm going to choose their history teacher, I know who I'm going to choose. So of course, if you go that route. Well, cool. So you chose business law and corporate, and now you're in that. You're very happy with it. What is it about that you really like the most?
So the reason I work with startups is because I love working with the different founders. So people like you, people like Haley, and every day is different. So I might get calls from different founders or emails, and I like the energy that the founders bring and the passion for their products and their companies. And that really drives me. I've done public company work, IPOs, and then the corporate securities compliance, and that can get really boring.
IPOs, wow. You worked with a company that IPO'd. Which one? Or are you allowed to say or no?
I mean, I could. You won't know any of them. They're like really specific tech companies.
Entertain me.
ONI Systems.
Oh, that one. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. There's others that I worked on, but I worked as in-house counsel. I worked at Sun Microsystems, you know, so went through the Oracle acquisition of Sun, those types of things. But it's just, it gets a little boring, like doing the same thing. And working with startups is much more fun.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely fresher. It's fun. But I have to ask you a question. Like, a lot of them don't make it. Some do. So is that something that attorneys in your space that specialize in tech startups, is that something that they struggle with? Is like, man, I lost another client because they went out of business?
For me, I don't look at it that way.
Okay.
Because I think that most of the founders that I work with, even if their first idea is going to fail, they're going to have another one, or they're going to go to another startup. And then to me, it's building the long-term business relationships. And, you know, I like to see the growth in the founders too. I think that, so Vidya Law, which is the name of my law firm, Vidya in Sanskrit means knowledge or learning and teaching. So, and
cool.
maybe this goes back to the educator piece too. That's my passion, is that I feel a lot of what I do is teach people, right, about how to form a business, how to raise money, how to go along, right, sell your company, and everything in between. And I think, you know, the first time founder, it's, you know, they need the most hand holding, and then as their next venture, they're not going to need as much. But for me, I know that some companies are going to fail, but I'm very fortunate in a lot of the people that one company goes under, they'll call me for the next one they're at. And so then we get to see what they're doing next and what is that next stage of their career, and how can I help them at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, I could validate that too. I mean, as your client with my company, I know that then whatever the next company is going to be that I start, I'm going to be using you. There's no question. Like, I don't even have any.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries at all. Not only that, I mean, I love recommending people to you. But so, okay. So that's super interesting. And I can definitely also just add on to that in the sense that, like, when I've been working with you too, like, you can definitely get a feel when an attorney is just trying to sound smarter than you, and they're trying to just, you know, talk up for a really long time to rack up their hours or whatever. Some do that, actually. I've actually experienced that before.
I know.
And other ones are just like, they're short, they're concise. They want to teach you and make sure that you understand it, and they'll give you specific examples, which is one thing I love about your emails. So, like, you'll explain something and then you'll say like a scenario that actually puts it into perspective for me as like a CEO that doesn't know law. But like, you really do try to teach, like really teach me what I don't know, and you present it in a way that, you know, preserves my ego, so to say. It makes me still feel smart.
Well, yeah, I can see there's, when you talk about attorneys and them, a lot of them being smart IQs, but then you get the ones that are condescending, right?
Yeah.
And because they think they're the smartest person in the room. To me, and if you read a lot of executives, they, like, you talk about Bezos, and I don't know if he said this or there's others, Musk or some, you know.
Yeah.
It's like the CEO shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. They want to hire the smartest people in the room to help them.
Bingo.
Right. And I think it's similar with me. I have a lot of smart people like you and others that I work with all the time. And I don't see there's no need to be condescending and prove your worth or your value as an attorney. I think that it's important. And to me, it's that, and I tell clients this when we're incorporating, and I do a lot of incorporations where I do them on a flat fee. And part of the reason I do that is so that they feel comfortable and can ask as many questions as they want along the way of the process without worrying about that clock ticking up. Do I go over that? Sometimes, yes. Do I go under? Hopefully more than we go over that cap. But, you know, to me, it's building that relationship, because I think that it does a disservice to a client if the client doesn't feel comfortable calling you or emailing you for advice. Yeah. Because that will cost them more in the long run. And if they're not comfortable with you, I tell clients, you know, when they're interviewing me, if you have to pick the person that's the fit for you. Yeah. And if you don't feel comfortable with your attorney, that's a big red flag. Yeah, definitely. You have to feel like you really trust them a lot. Yeah, and be able to, you know, this is what I don't know. That's why I'm going to the expert. I tell, you know, obviously working with tech people, I say, I don't know how to code. If I'm going to develop an app, I'm going to hire a developer, right? Same thing. Like, yes, people can Google different things about the law, and but Google's not a lawyer, and, you know, you need to find the lawyer that is specialized in the area that you have the question in. It's funny, I actually got an email from a client the other day that was asking something about alternative work hours, like 3 12-hour shifts and what you have to pay in California and how that goes. And in the email from the VP of HR, she's like, Google has a lot of different, you know, answers on this. Well, that's because Google's not a lawyer, and you need to talk to a lawyer. So.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, they just bring other people on board, and but for like a hodgepodge of answers.
Yeah, I mean, people write blogs or newsletters, and attorneys, you can glean different information from people, but unless you know how to put it all together and analyze it, it's not going to be super helpful.
Right. So one thing that I asked you was your least favorite part, your favorite part. Now, just the opposite of that would be like within the area that you're doing now, which is like tech startups. What's your least favorite part?
Clients calling me on Friday at 4:00 and expecting me to get on the phone and do something urgently right then, like fire somebody. Yeah, that's terrible.
I hope I haven't done that to you.
No, not you. But it has happened. And I which I don't understand, right? Because you knew you were going to possibly fire this person. Why wouldn't you have called me 2, 3, 4 last week, days ahead?
Well, you got to fire him on Friday. Remember from Office Space?
Yeah. That's a great movie. I love that movie.
So
yeah, it's really unfortunate people call at the last minute. Or people just call and think that I'm going to be available right when they're calling or texting or emailing me, right? So somebody might email me at 8:00 at night, but I'm not going to answer you, right? And then I might have sometimes then the next morning I have another email from that person. Like, just following up on this, well, it was 8:00 last night and now it's 9 a.m. And so, it's just understanding that I'm not just sitting there waiting for that one client to talk to me. And so that's difficult and annoying in some ways. Because like you think about, you need to go to the doctor or the dentist, you have to call and make an appointment, right? You're not just going to walk into the office and say, I need to see this person right now. And it seems like with a lot of lawyers, people expect that.
Yeah, it's basically on that line of being a really I don't want to say toxic, but definitely a codependent relationship.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But most clients aren't like that. There's just usually a handful.
Maybe not codependent because you're obviously setting the boundaries, but they would lean into that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's about setting boundaries and expectations. And I think when you're a younger attorney, you're just trying to please everyone. You're trying to build your business. It's a service-based industry, so you have to have good service, good responsiveness. And then you get to a certain point where I built this, but then how do you change your mindset to set more boundaries, right? And I've really struggled with that because I'm type A, I'm a people pleaser, and it's been hard for me just to set boundaries too on myself. But the last couple of years, I've been better at it. I try not to work on weekends, for the most part. So I try not to answer on weekends, where before I would be, checking my phone. I turned my phone, the dinging off when I receive an email. I did that a few years, probably like 4 years ago, because I felt like I was, Pavlov's dog, right? With that whole, the bell and the food, and they start salivating when they hear the bell. I always felt like I hear the ding, I have to look and I have to answer. So
therapy is amazing.
Yes, I agree. Everyone should be in therapy.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Like, so I have a friend who lives here in San Luis Obispo, and he's an attorney, and he struggles with some anxiety. I'm not going to name his name, but he definitely struggles with anxiety, and it might be better now, but it's been a little while since I've talked to him. But I mentioned to him, hey, why don't you go to therapy? And he said, no, I can't do that. And I'm like, really? And he basically said something along the lines of, as an attorney, if you do go to therapy and somehow they find out, they could use that against you. Is that something? My memory might not be right on that one, but it's something.
I don't think so.
Okay.
A lot more focus, I think, has been on attorney mindfulness and well-being.
Yeah.
Lately. And there's a lot more programs. As part of the bar, we have to do, continuing legal education, so many hours every so many years. And part of that is general legal topics, ethics, and then you have the mindfulness now and substance abuse. because a lot of lawyers have substance abuse problems.
Really?
And yeah, because I think with the stress and the anxiety, it's self-medication rather than getting that
It's got to
therapeutic
come out
help.
somehow.
So I think that
Yeah.
that there's more focus now on therapy. I haven't heard ever that they could use that against you.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
but maybe something's changed.
No,
No.
it was a little while ago that I
But
heard
no,
that.
I mean, maybe the firm or, people will think badly or that you're not competent if you have to use a crutch of therapy, right? A lot of
Yeah.
therapy has generally been looked at as a negative,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the past, I think we're turning the corner where it's now looked as a positive. For me, it's a positive, and
Yeah.
I've gone to therapy, so
Yeah, me too.
I think it's helpful.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I love therapy.
I mean, it's nice to have a independent third party that you can just, talk to and get feedback from that's not judging you in a way or not personalizing it because it's a friend or a family member.
Yeah.
It's helpful to talk through things.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with you on that one. And it is interesting how mindfulness is now starting to kind of infiltrate its way into law, which I would
Everything.
never think would be the first one to adopt that. But maybe it's because they're smart and they were like, oh,
I think a lot of the large firms do it as a marketing ploy because,
really?
well, if you work in big law, which I have,
Yeah.
you're basically a indentured servant.
Mm,
You work a ton. I mean, yes, you're paid well, but then if you break it down by the hours you work, it doesn't seem so great.
I heard that one person was saying, oh yeah, like I make $150K a year. They were saying how many hours they worked, and they made about double minimum wage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's the number of hours that they worked.
Right. So when I worked in big law, when I was a junior attorney, and don't get me wrong, there's benefits and like you get the best training and because you work on different deals and the expertise of the senior lawyers is amazing. But at the same time, you work so much. Like I worked every weekend. I didn't take vacations or I canceled vacations often. There was one December, I was doing a sale of a company. I worked every day except Christmas Day in that month. Yes.
No.
Every single day except Christmas Day. And I was a wreck. Yeah. So when you're trying to prove yourself and you're coming up the ranks, it's really hard to say no to things. And it can be bad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. So, therapy's good.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever you are listening out there, you know who you are and what I'm talking about. Go to therapy. It's good for you.
It is.
But yeah, that aside though. Okay. Well, interesting. So, I'm gonna take a little bit of a tangent now, and I wanted to ask something, especially in the area of like techs, people who are listening to you, who are in tech or whatever, and they want to know a lot about things that they should know before they start to talk to an attorney and consider one. For example, like let's say they're in the process of trying to find a good attorney. What's one piece of advice or question you would ask? Let me try to reword that. So like, let's say I'm a tech company, it's my first time, I've never hired an attorney before. Now I'm vetting them and I'm asking questions. What's one question that they should ask but usually don't? As if like maybe they had experience being an attorney and now they know all the inside questions. Like that's kind of what I'm going after.
No, I'm just trying to think.
Yeah.
I think they need to ask about the attorney's style. People don't really ask about that. So there are some lawyers where I call them they over lawyer things, right? So they'll see a contract and they'll not change the substance of the sentence, but they'll wordsmith it or they'll add different punctuations just to show they did something of value.
Sure.
And to me, that's not beneficial to anyone.
They're not going to admit that though.
No, of course not. But I would ask what the person's style is as far as, if you approach a contract, would you reword a paragraph even if it doesn't change the substance? That's a way to ask about it.
Yeah. How would you word it though to get them to?
I don't know. I'm thinking of, I think it's they need to ask about the practicality of the advice, right? There's a lot of lawyers that, well, this is the law.
Yeah.
This is, but they're not thinking about how to apply it to that business, right? So my job is not to tell somebody what to do. It's to, tell them the parameters that they need to do something within and how, can you do it this way to make it work? Obviously I'm not going to tell somebody to do something illegal, but, there's a lot of, theoretical analysis that a lot of smart lawyers will expose, and expunge or whatever the word, espouse.
Espouse, okay.
Sorry.
You guys know all sorts of fancy words. I like
Cut
listening to lawyers.
Cut that out. That they'll, talk theoretically, but then they're not giving the practical advice at the end of the day. So, I don't know how to, I can't think of the question on how to ask that, but it's some sort of an insight that would be helpful to gain when you're interviewing a lawyer. I think it's always good to go ask other people who they use and what they like and don't like about those lawyers. Like, so if there's a founder network, go to those people. That's a good way to get insight. You can ask, a lot of them don't ask to talk to other clients. Like get client references. That's a big one. And I would say,
Really?
I'm always happy to do that. If somebody asks, that's not a problem. But I think that's helpful too.
Okay.
To go to, another, I would say, okay, go talk to Haley at Passion or go talk to Michael at Spinshot or whatever new company he's at or, go talk to this person. And I think that can always be a good way for the potential client to ask questions that they would not want to ask directly to the attorney.
That's really good, actually. Yeah. Okay. That's a really good piece of advice. So if we distilled all that down to one question, though, that we could ask the attorney, I still got to get back to that, though. Like, what would that question be?
I guess, will you give me client references?
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
There we go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And do you write bullshit?
Yeah. Are you going to give me practical advice? And I don't think a lot of, I think billing is another one. Like people ask the rate, but a lot of clients don't understand that when you send me an email and I respond, that's something that's billable, right? It's not just drafting a document or reviewing a document, right?
Yeah.
If you're calling me or emailing me and I'm responding and giving you advice or talking through some scenarios with you, that is part of legal advice. And so I think a lot of very young entrepreneurs and founders don't necessarily understand that's how it works.
Yeah.
And so it's getting them to understand that. So maybe also a second question would be, how does the billing work? And
Yeah, well, before we got our funding, I was like very tight on money. And when I would write you questions, I would try to make it like as short as possible because I'm like, oh, she's got to charge me to read this. How to make this as short as possible. But then I'm spending my time trying to make
But
it
sometimes
super
when
short.
you're trying to write it too short, you're not giving me all the data points that I need. So then it's a follow-up. And so you have to balance that, right?
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes I'll just say, I don't understand what you're trying to get at. Let's get on the phone.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. But, unfortunately, like you said, there's some lawyers that for every email, even if it's a short, super email, they'll charge you 0.2, right? Because we live in 6-minute increments and they'll do a minimum of 0.2. We don't do that at my firm.
Okay.
But yeah. And then sometimes if it's just like a quick one, I don't always bill it.
I can ask you how your day's going.
So
I feel like, hey, how you doing today?
yeah, I won't bill you for that.
You're doing great.
So.
Here's a testimonial. Here's an audio testimonial.
But yeah, so that's interesting about people understanding how we bill our time.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Cool. Yeah, well, that's actually really good for people to know out there. So what is so you haven't seen Better Call Saul. I was going to ask you about that one, but that's a no-go. Next time we talk, though, I want you to watch one episode. Just one.
Okay.
And that'd be great. So you did watch Law and Order. That one's a good one. But is there any law TV show out there that's actually kind of realistic at all? Or no, they're all pretty much kind of Hollywoody?
They're all Hollywoody.
Really?
You'd be bored to death if it was realistic.
What about
not exciting.
Yeah, it's not exciting. What about a movie,
Silicon
though?
Valley is probably the most realistic with the lawyer in Silicon Valley.
Why?
Because what he's doing and how he interacts with the founders, that's pretty much very realistic.
Yeah.
That's probably the only one.
So
but I've seen it for corporate lawyers.
What's the most unrealistic thing you've seen?
Probably Ally McBeal with, dancing babies and things.
Well, come on.
I know.
I
don't
yeah.
know.
If you can't think of it.
If you want realistic about law school, there's this old movie called The Paper Chase.
Okay.
It's like from the early 70s, but it's very realistic about law school.
Yeah.
A movie that's realistic sort of about a trial and it was also a book, it's called The Verdict. It was with Paul Newman in the movie. But most of them are very, glamorized in some way. If it's a TV show, like you think about LA Law or Ally McBeal or those.
Yeah.
I think that, like movies, I always get so upset. Like there's a movie called Just Mercy with Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan. It's a great movie.
I haven't seen it yet.
But it's about a black man who gets wrongfully accused and this young black attorney who fights for him to get out of jail. And it's a great movie and it's based on a true story. I would say that's somewhat realistic.
Okay.
But it's hard because it's not exciting what we do.
Yeah, no dancing babies at all. No.
And like trial litigators, that takes years to go to trial. And it's a lot of paperwork back and forth and preparing and for them. And, it's just, in my day is a lot of video calls, talking to people, advising, reviewing contracts or reviewing formation documents or drafting funding documents. So.
Yeah. We're still good on time.
Okay.
So you get a call, and it's a police officer. And they say, hey, you know what? We heard something happen to one of your friends, and, it's a crime kind of thing. And we just want you to come into the station. We just want to ask you a couple of questions. What do you say?
Do you have a warrant?
And they'll say, no, we don't.
Then, no, I'm not coming.
But don't you want to go in there just to kind of clear yourself because you know you're innocent?
It depends. There's people that are innocent, but the cops might be focusing on them, right? And then they're going to twist everything you say. You've probably seen on Netflix that Making a Murderer documentary. But
I think I saw the trailer.
I think it's skewed. I mean, it's a documentary, but you get the focus of the documentarian. But there's this young teenager who seems to have somewhat of an IQ issue. And, the police are just badgering him until, he starts to say things like they, keep saying something. So then he parrots it back and then he's sitting in jail now.
Wow.
So it just would depend,
Okay.
Is it something where you really know you're a witness or would you possibly be the focus because you might have been around when your friends are talking about doing something bad and then they went and did it?
Yeah.
It just depends.
Yeah. So would you ever recommend to a client to go talk to the police?
No, not without a lawyer.
Really? Like not even like, hey, I'm just going to tell them I'm innocent, like not even that?
No.
Really? Why? Because the cops could do something or they could butcher it up?
They're going to take things out of context and I mean, maybe I have a cynical view of the police.
I used to work for the police.
Did you? I didn't know that.
I used to work as a community service officer at UC Irvine. So I had a walkie-talkie and I'd make sure that people weren't stealing books. Yeah. That's
good.
Yeah.
But I just think people need to be careful. It might be perfectly innocent, but, I have clients that get subpoenas for records occasionally. The first thing I do is make sure it's a legitimate case. And then we look at the subpoena and things. And then if it's something that they want to fight, then we'll go to a litigator. But otherwise, for records and things, they'll comply.
Okay.
But for someone like gets pulled over and the cop is like, let me search your trunk. You don't have to consent to that. So, they have to have a certain threshold of reasonable suspicion. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of cops that just push over the limit.
Yeah, they kind of know how people work and like, I think I can get them scared. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So I would always say, even if you're completely innocent, talk to a criminal defense attorney before you go in.
Okay. Official advice. Good legal advice. So what is we got time for one more question before we head out. What is the weirdest moment you've ever experienced as an attorney?
So I worked in house counsel for some companies, and in one role, I supported HR. And so, I'd always get calls from HR, like about somebody doing something stupid. And one time I got a call about this one department, and apparently they were going to strip clubs at lunch. And then they come back and they're doing shots out of the loading dock on a Friday. And then the female employees are giving the male employees lap dances. And, we need to now do an investigation and fire people. And this is not, it's like Mad Men, right? The 60s and all the sexual harassment, right? And then this is the 2000s. It should not be happening, right? And it was just a crazy, I'm like, you're kidding me, right? You're telling me this is real? Like, people are doing this? People are saying these things? So that was a weird, awkward moment. And plus, if you work in a company, you get to know some of these people, and then you hear from HR that this is what this person said or that person said, and it gets really awkward for you because you can't talk about it with anybody else. And then what these weird or awful things these people are doing, and you would like, really? That person said that and is harassing that person that works with them? And it's very weird. It's very awkward. Yeah. So
what if they all went to therapy?
Maybe that would help.
Yeah.
And then one other awkward thing, which was really strange. So I was paralegal, but I worked in house, and somebody got fired, and they sued the company. And then I was called to be deposed by the person's
deposed.
So I had to go sit for a deposition so that his attorney was able to question me, and it had to do with his stock options.
Okay.
And because I administered the stock option plan, and even though I knew I wasn't in trouble or anything, you just feel so anxious again, like you're in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Like I did something wrong because this person's just asking you questions and questions and questions. And it was crazy feeling. I never would want to do that again.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how you feel so nervous there, but when it comes to being recorded with multiple cameras and microphones, somehow, some way, you can feel comfortable. You feel really.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's all good.
This is great. Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that probably wraps up the podcast for today.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And for all of you out there, we can do a little plug for your site so that people can find you if they like you. So it's vidyalaw.com if you want to spell that just in case.
VIDYALAW.com, Vidyalaw.
Okay. And the best way to reach out to you if they want to hire you.
Donica at vidyalaw.com, DONICA at VIDYALAW.com.
All right, got it.
Thank you.
Donica, thanks so much for being our
first guest. First guest. I can't wait to hear what you come up with when you just distill it all down. Make me look good.
Yeah. No, it won't be too hard.
It's fun.
All right, Donica, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
That was fun.
That was cool.
I can't wait to hear it all.
I've never done this before, so I had no idea if I was going to like
both
it.
New.
Yeah, but I loved this. This is so great.
Yeah, you'll have to have other people. Like, you should get Judy on and Haley and
yeah.
all kinds of people.
I can't wait.